What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, Joker back again, once again, and never let it be said that I, your most humble of host, am a quitter. Would I rather be trucking along through Final Fantasy XIV, inching ever closer to Endwalker? Absolutely yes! Did I mention Final Fantasy XIV at the beginning of this video to annoy people who get pissy when I have the audacity to have other interests outside of Destiny and talk about them? Yes! But I did drag myself away from the award-winning Final Fantasy XIV, opened up a bottle of vodka, and sat down to play Destiny once again. So I could answer one question, or, well, two questions, and two questions alone. Is the 30th anniversary pack worth your time and money? The 30th anniversary event, if you can call it that, is divided into two parts. You have the free-to-play offering, which introduces a menagerie-like activity called Jeopardy! Or The Price is Right, or Wheel of Fortune, or Professor Genki's Fun Time Murder Time.
Hello, Steelport, and welcome to Professor Genki's Super Ethical Reality Climax.
No, it's actually called The Dares of Eternity, a menagerie-like game show hosted by Xur and Starhorse, where you do zany activities for the amusement of Starhorse, who judges you with nays. That sounds stupid, but it's actually the coolest part of the DLC. Starhorse has more character than virtually every other fucking NPC in Destiny. I'm not even joking when I say that. That's not a joke. Starhorse conveys through nays and subtitles more character and personality than literally every other cardboard cutout that Destiny dares to call a character. It's so fucking dumb. It's awesome, don't get me wrong, but it's so fucking dumb. Oh god, it's funny as fuck. I'm not gonna lie. I love Starhorse. The other part of the 30th anniversary event is a $25 to $30 dungeon, ironically titled Grasp of Avarice. You heard that right, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, and if the irony was any thicker, you could cut it with a knife. In the Grasp of Avarice dungeon, we delve into the depths of the loot cave and uncover the mysteries of a fire team that not only lost their light, but fell to their greed. Bungie, my beautiful pal, my buddy, my friend, my companion, my compadre on this journey we call life. Maybe, just maybe, don't throw stones in glass houses? Now, oh viewer mine, you're probably wondering if any of this shit is good. And the answer is a resounding yes. We're going to start with the dungeon, but do not worry, I am not going to spoil anything. The dungeon is an absolute blast. If I was to describe it, it is basically an entire dungeon designed around the Kingsfall raid Wall of Dicks. Or at least the idea of it. This sort of pitfall humor is the dungeon's greatest strength. It is not an understatement when I say I have never laughed harder while playing Destiny. Nor am I joking when I say Grasp of Avarice is quite possibly my favorite day one endgame Destiny dungeon raid content experience. I highly enjoyed this dungeon, but that enjoyment comes with a huge asterisk. One, it's only good when you play with friends that you know. I'm sorry, the humor there and the potential for annoyance through the mechanics only works when you're playing with buddies who are gonna laugh. If you're playing with people who are trying to get through it and not willing to go, okay, that was dumb, but like also kind of funny, you're probably going to have a shit time. In fact, I would even go as far as to argue if you're not actively sabotaging your teammates on your first playthrough of this dungeon or their first playthrough of this dungeon, you're playing it wrong. That said, when your dungeon is basically inspired, at least thematically, from Kingsfall's Wall of Dicks, as any vet remembers, that joke only works twice. The first time it happens to you, or the first time you trick somebody else into doing it. However, outside of those examples, once you know the gimmick, you largely ignore the gimmick because you're playing the dungeon to get the loot, not to experience the dungeon because you've already experienced the dungeon, and that experience is, unfortunately, kind of one note. The amazing strength of this dungeon's first-time playthrough is also its greatest weakness, because it only works once. Once you know the punchline, well, the joke still may be funny, especially when you tell it to new people. It's repetitive when you have to hear it. On top of that, I have no issue saying that this is quite possibly the easiest dungeon in all of Destiny, if not the easiest piece of endgame content in all of Destiny. There's one set of mechanics, and this one set of mechanics is reused over and over and over and over and over and over and over ad nauseum. Now, to be fair, this ease of access probably comes with the price tag on the dungeon, needing the dungeon to be accessible and beatable largely by everybody who buys it. In fact, I would dare say if you were worried about buying this DLC because the dungeon would be really hard or something like that, don't worry about that. It's super easy, barely an inconvenience. Which will be great once Bungie fixes the little loot glitch. That allows you to only run it once a week per character. It's supposed to be able to be farmable, but apparently shipped as not farmable. This was an oversight or a glitch or something. Bungie will be fixing it, and the ease of access, the ease of playing the dungeon, the fact that you can largely ignore most of its pitfalls will be a boon to players grinding this out, for better or worse. Now, the biggest issue when trying to convey the value of the dungeon is twofold. On one hand, you have a $25 dungeon that is admittedly a blast to play. I loved every moment of playing it the first time, but it will have diminishing returns. The biggest issue when trying to convey the value of the 30th anniversary dungeon is twofold. On one hand, you have a $25 to $30 dungeon that is admittedly a blast to play for the first time, but no one can argue that the dungeon won't have diminishing return, as it goes from, hey, this is kind of a zany, cool experience, to, can we just get through this thing to get the loot, please? On the other hand, you have what is essentially a $25 to $30 dungeon and its pay-to-win counterpart, Gjallarhorn. By comparison, Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker is $40. Yes, a little more expensive, $15, but it has 8 dungeons and a raid and a huge 20-hour main story questline, along with hundreds of other side quests. I don't bring that comparison up to belittle Destiny, by the way. I'm sure when I made it, some of you were like, okay, yeah, but I don't like Final Fantasy. I like Destiny. And I'm sure even more of you were like, okay, yeah, but Joker, Halo has $20 armor. I mean, a dungeon with a bunch of suits of armor that you get for buying it, and Gjallarhorn for $25 is way better than $20 for one suit of armor in Halo. But that's where we get to value propositions. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If this was a $10 to $15 DLC, it would be an easy recommend, no questions asked. At $25, however, I can recommend it to people who are already engaged with Destiny, who were probably already going to buy it anyways and already have, but I can't recommend it to people who have opted out of Destiny and keep checking in to see if maybe this is the DLC that they should return to. That doesn't make me a hater, I hope. That just makes me conscientious of my subscribers. There's also the fact that Gjallarhorn is insanely powerful, and yeah, you really can't argue that this isn't pay to win. You're paying to get Gjallarhorn. And if you don't have Gjallarhorn, you're going to be at a significant disadvantage. Gjallarhorn by far is going to be the most powerful exotic in the game, on top of the fact that it allows legendary rocket launchers to turn into mini Gjallarhorns. So you don't even need to have Gjallarhorn for Gjallarhorn to be powerful for you and anybody you're playing with. I can very easily see LFGs going back to the day of must have Gjallarhorn, which, with Gjallarhorn behind a $25 paywall, is kind of a problem, because you can't even really argue in good faith that this dungeon is necessary for continuing playing the game. It's not. It should be extra. However, it has a piece of content that will, unless it's nerfed or until it's nerfed, dictate PvE content. As lazy as this might sound as a judgment, if you're interested in Destiny and you're interested in Destiny endgame content, the $25 to $30 dungeon is probably still a bit of a stretch, but you are going to get your enjoyment out of it. If you're not, this most certainly isn't the piece of content that's going to reignite your passion for Destiny. It's not going to restore all the lost goodwill that Bungie once had. It's not going to suddenly heal all wounds and make Destiny the greatest MMORPG ever created. It's just really good content with a bunch of bad stuff surrounding it. As for Star Horse's Murder Time Fun Time, which is the free event that you can just log in and play, It's amazing. As I said earlier, this is a horde mode, not horde mode menagerie type event, but unlike other horde mode, not horde mode menagerie wannabes, this actually nails it. From presentation where Xur and Starhorse are game show host, and Starhorse is judging you with nays, and I said it earlier, but Starhorse is literally the funniest, most interesting, well fleshed out character who is actually a fucking character in all of Destiny, which says more about the other characters than Starhorse, but details. On top of Starhorse just being funny as fuck at all times, I'm not even joking. Like, that sounds like a meme when I say it, but I'm not. It's always funny. So on top of Starhorse judging you like a smug yandere and being funny at all times, Xur's deadpan delivery of fucking game show verbiage and presentation is just fucking amazing. They did a really good job with this event, at least presentation-wise. When you enter into it, you spin the Wheel of Fortune to find out what you're fighting. What you're fighting tends to have the same mechanic every time if you're fighting that thing. So, for example, if I'm fighting Hive, that'll have one consistent mechanic, but if I'm fighting Cabal, that'll have another mechanic. If I'm fighting Taken, another mechanic. If I'm fighting Vex, you guessed it, another mechanic. This is really cool, and it keeps the gameplay fresh. There's also things and objectives that you can do while playing this that will net you extra points and sometimes extra loot. There are 3 main bosses who I won't spoil because they will be a treat to any Destiny 1 veterans, but each of these 3 bosses have their own mechanics, have their own arenas. It's really well done. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this event proves the thesis of my entire channel. I'm not a hater, I just know Bungie can do better. So all in all, while some disingenuous idiots may think it's negative to point out some of the issues surrounding the 30th anniversary DLC and Destiny in general, it would be a disservice not to remind people of these things while also pointing out that, hey, the actual game content is good, but it comes with a huge asterisk. This is good, but. Anyways, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Remember to like, but only if you did. Subscribe for more. Feel free to donate to my Patreon if you're feeling particularly generous. But above all else, stay frosty.